What's up? Now, you guys should be able to hear me. What's good, everybody? What's good, Darth Angel, Ray, Blue Eagle Gamer, Jay? Back for another Yoda's Hut.
Another one.
Choco's with us today. Uh-oh. Getting double messages on TikTok again. I hope you guys are ready for today's episode. Probably not as long as the other one, because it's only a 20-minute video, but we are back with Max of Zorro. We're going to be... Well, I don't know how inaccurate this video is, but judging from the hyperspace video...
It might be fine. You know, it might just be... We agree.
The title is How to Write Lightsabers for Disney Star Wars, though. And you know, not much has changed in that regard.
I mean, I'm not hopeful.
T-Mobile. Nick Amarillo says, hello. Hope everyone has had a great day today. It's a good day so far. How about yourself, Nick? You know, it's quite telling how we filmed a video not too long ago talking about inaccurate and sensational headlines, and Chet came out with a video today doing exactly what we thought was going to happen, which was misrepresenting the article and also buying into it, just like all the other comments. And that's why we have to increase our frequency, increase our work towards correcting all of the misinfo. Not too bad. Started my first day of my new job today. Congratulations, Nick.
Who got a new job?
Nick Amarillo. Or Amarillo.
Amarillo.
Let us know how you say that. Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are like in Texas refuse to say Amarillo. I'm from Amarillo. Sure, okay.
Well, I also, some places, interesting enough, like, will name something after something else, but or it'll arrive at the name by unusual means. So it actually is something different.
Yeah.
Like, I lived in Portland for a long time, and the main street, the main road everyone, you know, does everything off of is, well, it's spelled Couch. Couch, right? And you're like, oh, Couch Street. And you're like, no, it's Cooch Street. And you're like, word? Like,
It could also
yeah.
be kook as well, depending.
But 100% of the people up there, it's Cooch Street. And you're like, I don't like that at all.
It happens all the time too. I mean,
anyone Pacific Northwesters want to corroborate me there?
how's it going, Andy Wise Guy? Gentlemen, good evening. Master James Kenobi, what's up? You could say it either way. My dad is Latino. My mom is white from Texas, where there is an Amarillo, Texas. I mean, I would argue that when Mexico had the territory, it was Amarillo. I like to make the joke that, like, whenever I'm talking to a white person and they're like, "I'm from San Diego. Don't you mean San Diego?"
Well, I mean, down here or north of here, like South County, South Orange County, all the streets and stuff are all Spanish named. You know, like it's Aviendo and you know, like even like Avenue and stuff like that is all
Avenido,
Spanish. Yeah. And it's just funny because none of them can pronounce it. One of the ones that kills me though is further up north is San Rafael, but people call it San Rafael.
I mean, they surely failed on that one. That's a Rafael. And you wise guy is a Pacific Northwest Canadian. I can confirm, Chaco, it's mind-numbing. I find myself saying San Diego like Ron Burgundy, like San Diego.
San Diego.
Oh, San Diego.
Drink it in. It always goes down smooth.
I mean, it's you can't avoid it in LA or in California. You really can't.
I mean, I legitimately live like 30 minutes from Mexico.
But do you really
we drive down there all the time.
Do you really think that it was white people and Americans that came up with Rancho Cucamonga?
No. It's also interesting because there is a lot of stuff that retains like Native American names. You know, where we live was the Cuyumaca tribe, and so stuff is still named for them. And it like, part of me is like, okay, cool, they changed the name to honor them, but like, we also didn't give them their land back, so now it kind of feels like we're dunking on them. You know?
I'm trying to think of the restaurant that I'm trying to reference right now.
El Torito.
I mean, there is in East LA, El Taurino. But I'm trying to. That's what it's called. Michoacana. I don't know why I was just thinking of that restaurant. How's it going, Kenny? Hello there, everyone. How are we tonight? We're doing well.
I'm finally getting close to the end of a fairy tale. At least I think. Not 1,000-Year War. Or, sorry. Huh?
Are you in the 400s?
Wait, there's 4. Never mind.
Well, I'm not sure how they number it, and where are you watching Netflix?
So where I'm at, Gray is fighting his dad. Well, his dad's body.
And that the current arc is him learning about where
he just learned last episode.
Okay. Straight from Sawyer's stream to you guys? Oh, I forgot that she does streams on Tuesdays. Shout out to Sawyerism. What did you think of this latest episode of Bleach? I haven't seen it yet. Don't say nothing.
There's so much stuff, but like I do really love Fairy Tail.
See, I told you.
I know all the oh no, I've been watching it, and reading it for a long time. I just fell off for like a decade. you know, they add a lot of depth to characters, and even though there is a lot of fan service, and they do Lucy dirty with fan service.
I think they do her clean. Depends on your point of view.
Just every episode, she gets like kidnapped and then tied up in a weird way, or attacked by someone with like vine arms or something. And you're like, okay, man. But no, they develop each character, and like, I mean, Urza Scarlet is top tier.
Who's your favorite character, Urza?
Probably Urza.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say it's basic.
But I mean, I love Loxus a lot, especially, you know, he turned around in the end.
My favorite was Loxus until did Loxus show up?
Huh? No.
How's it going, Legacy?
My dog just pooped somewhere nearby. And I'm not going to be able to focus until I address this. I'll be right back.
You could see the exact moment Choco's mind was blown. Probably. Going back to that previous conversation we were having. Like, I live in Los Angeles. Like, it's funny how white it's become. Like, people say Los Angeles, and there's a street called Las Tunas, and then they call it Los Tunas. I mean, it's nitpicky, but how are you guys doing? What are you doing with your Tuesday nights? This episode of Yoda's Hut, we're gonna be. Actually, I might as well just switch it to our reaction scene here. We're gonna be reacting to how to write lightsabers for Disney. Harmless, right? Yeah, it's harmless. We'll see. It's a shorter video than the last one we did where we debunked hyperspace lore, but you know, I'm not looking forward to the arguments that are about to be made on this video. Spooky Kitty's working. James Kenobi slept, as it's Wednesday here. I got the Celtics on mute and listening to the stream. Right on. I appreciate you prioritizing our audio over the game. The Celtics can lose on mute, right? It's fine. Reading Creature Commandos issue 2, maybe Ewoks issue 2 after. Been holding it off. Blue Eagle Gamer, you are like... I think you've surpassed us in comics.
I'm so excited for Creature Commando. It's going to be great.
What were we talking about? Oh, I was saying Laxus was my favorite until Natsu also got Electric Dragon. So I was like, well, I mean, you're just everything now. It's just kind of along with Juvia and Wendy. Wendy and Carla.
Wendy just stood up, cut off her hair, and was like, listen, I'm gonna say this. And I was like, that was like the last, I think that was like the last episode. It was within the last 2 episodes. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah.
You're watching it in Japanese, right?
Yeah.
Wendy, the way Wendy says "tend you" is so adorable, and like she says it consistently the same way too.
Yeah, Fairy Tail is a show that I'll actually will switch back and forth between English and Japanese depending on what I'm doing.
What's going on, Stanzy? I'm rereading my way through all of the Infinite Crisis.
Infinite Crisis, the DC. Right.
I know the comic run, but I'm always like Infinity or Infinite, which was when I first started reading comics back in the day. Interesting. You know what? It's not a comic, but you guys have reminded me that I still have to finish my Lore About Revan series. I think I'm on chapter 3. I'm supposed to read that with you guys. That was my first ever like video series where I was like, you know what? Let's try to get everyone on the same page with Revan. I'm sick and tired of these glazers. I'm a spooky kitty.
Yes, you are.
Well, no, that name, that name actually makes me want to say from James Silent Bob, I'm a noble rabbit. You're a spooky kitty? I'm a noble rabbit. Nice to meet you. Quote, you can have lightsabers, but they can't be any color of the rainbow because rainbows are woke and trigger me. Also, masculinity is important. I'm sure there's going to be arguments to that effect with this video. Choco, before we start with this video, though, what are your top 2 misconceptions that you think is going to be present in this video?
Top 2 misconceptions. So for one, there's this weird idea that I see that lightsabers cut without resistance of anything ever, which is just not true and plain to see if you watch any Star Wars, like and then also there's going to be like some severe misunderstanding on the lethality of lightsabers. As far as like cutting and like stabbing tools are concerned, the lightsabers are the least are the least lethal. That's kind of why Jedi use them, right? You get a cut, they cut off a limb, it cauterizes it so they can survive and not bleed out. Same thing with being stabbed. I just remember that, in the Acolyte, people were like, "Oh, she died to tiny knives because they're more effective than a lightsaber," and you're like, "Yeah, they are." That's true.
Yeah, I mean, lightsabers are very powerful. They're very potent, but they're not as they're not as lethal as a sharp object. They can certainly do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So,
but literally, you could take a rapier and like poke someone, make a tiny hole, and that person would die and bleed out and all this stuff, and that would never happen with a lightsaber.
I'm predicting that we're going to hear about, obviously, how, just like you said, how they're not lethal anymore, and they're probably going to make some inaccurate position that the colors don't mean anything anymore. We'll see. What's going on, DePaul? We're about to debunk this video, so stick around if you have time. Let's go. This is How to Write Lightsabers for Disney Star Wars by Max of Zorro. Let me start it right now. Alright, so we're gonna debunk this video as well. We're back again with Max of Zorro, our good friend from our hyperspace lore video that just kind of made 38 minutes of really wrong information, so
There was so much wrong. It was crazy.
I guess we're excited to see what he has to say about lightsabers. How to write lightsabers for Disney Star Wars. Let's go.
Hello there, and welcome to the Disney Star Wars Writers Room. You must be nervous. I know I was on my first day here, but don't you worry. I'm here to teach you everything you need to know about how to write for Star Wars in current year. Over the course of these training videos, you will learn a myriad of different modern writing techniques, including why cause and effect is for losers, how to emasculate your male heroes in favor of younger, less...
Yeah.
Emasculate?
Listen, if you need to fix something to be masculine... If you need loud noises, like I keep on hearing, man, it's like, oh yeah, the electric cars, it doesn't have the sound of the V10. Like, I'm a man. I don't really need that stuff. Like, I'm not poking fun at you if you love that stuff, but if you need it to feel some type of way about your masculinity, there's some insecurity there. But I didn't even think that this was going to be present in a lightsaber. I guess.
less problematic protagonists, as well as a compendium on manipulating your audience through the use of cute droid sidekicks. But that's all a bit advanced for our first lesson. Today we're going to talk about something a little smaller.
Nothing you can say can possibly be advanced.
Scale, something less consequential to Star Wars as an IP. Today, we're going to talk about lightsaber fights. Now, if you're coming into this knowing absolutely nothing about lightsabers, don't sweat it. Here at Disney, being completely unfamiliar with the subject matter you're writing is not only acceptable, it's a prerequisite. Write what you know, more like write what you don't know.
Which is kind of weird because it's like the same people at Lucasfilm who worked under George. So
yeah, I kind of feel
people,
like these
we're
guys
already...
know a lot more than you, Max.
The fact, yeah. We'll probably get into it more.
Wouldn't change it until it fits your worldview. In fact, the first rule of writing for a Disney project is don't get caught up in trying to make sure everything in your story makes sense or fits canon or whatever. The only people who really care about that stuff are the toxic fans. You know, the type who complain for hours and hours about world building and consistency and blah, blah, blah.
No, those are people who are actually engaging with the content critically.
Yeah.
Like,
there's nothing wrong with engaging critically with the content. I mean,
yeah, we can talk about the world building and consistency, but so like equivocating all of this stuff to them not knowing about Star Wars, being emasculated by women existing in Star Wars is not the toxic side, and the people who are talking about Star Wars and its critical aspects are the toxic ones. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, look, He's got the carpet nugget on the screen, so yeah, they are toxic, but they don't complain about world building. They complain about wokeness. they don't engage with Star Wars in that way. Spooky Kitty says, I don't know, guys. I'm not so sure this guy is being objective, right?
We don't need that type of negativity here. And besides, we already have a process where every Star Wars script goes through a final vetting process with this guy named Pablo, our resident Loremaster. And it's his job to read through your script.
But he was also the Loremaster under George as well.
Yeah.
And make sure it doesn't contradict with something from Star Wars history. I know, one guy responsible for all of that. Isn't it great? So
no, it's a story group. There's actually a bunch of people responsible for
like 9
all of
people
that. And also presently it all runs through Dave Filoni as well.
You just let him worry about all that nerd stuff while you focus on writing the story the way you want to. Now, if you're anything like the rest of us Disney writers, you're probably feeling the itch to want to be super.
And we're also gonna push back on that. There aren't any Disney writers. They're all just writers.
Yeah, it's just
We're subversive in your writing. I love it. That's great. Hold on to that mentality. Subversion is such a cheap and easy way to get people.
I also want to point out that close to 2 minutes in, we have not talked about lightsabers.
Talking about your project.
Oh my gosh, is your computer on fire?
So Suki dropped a fat log, and so I lit a little candle, and I just blew it out.
Gotcha. That was so weird. It's like,
Yes, that
damn,
was a
Chaco's
cool
getting
effect.
heated. He's the master of making bald reactionary Star Wars man baby gets cry. True.
Drum up some controversy. But the best way to be subversive is to first get a good surface level understanding of the way things used to work so that you know how best to undercut and reshape it to fit your narrative.
This would be a very broad description of your videos. Right. You gain a surface level understanding of how things work and then make videos about how they don't work.
It's wrong now in order to serve your own narrative.
Yeah.
No, that sounds about right.
And when it comes to lightsaber combat, the best place to begin is with lightsaber training. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Max, I wasn't going to have the characters in my story do any training at all. Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that. Training sequences in movies are so boring, and they never ever do anything to give insight into the characters or their worldviews at all. They just...
that's your opinion, but several training sequences in movies can have important character development.
Yeah.
just take up runtime where more important scenes could go. But from time to time, you may find yourself in the position where the studio executives mandate that you add in these training scenes in order to pander to those toxic fans we talked about earlier. Of course,
I would agree. If you're talking about the people who always want to see training as proof that they know something, that is the toxic crowd. But I don't think that they're pandering to that crowd.
it's not the executive's fault that you now have a bunch of extra work to do. It's those toxic fans' fault. If they just didn't care so much.
I'm starting to think that he is pointing to toxic fans unironically. And not, genuinely.
I don't know what he's trying to do.
I'm waiting for franchise that they grew up with and built friendships around and saw as a source of comfort in difficult times.
How far are we in already? We're 2.5 minutes in, and he said lightsabers, but we have not spoken about writing lightsabers.
Caring so much, then we would be free to change Star Wars to whatever we want it to be. But mandates are mandates, so if you are told you have to show your Jedi doing some training, here's a very brief summary of lightsaber combat form.
Hold on. I want to go back to this point here. To whatever we want it to be. Who's we? And who's going to decide what that is? Because obviously we are not going to all agree on what we want it to be. Me and Chaco regularly spit out our pitches as to what we want to see all the time, and it's different. We can ask the chat, what do you want Star Wars to be? Let's see if anybody overlaps and provides the same answer. Really quickly, chat. What should Star Wars be? Marcus DeWoo says, I thought he was being sarcastic about the training, not helping with character world creation. I don't know if he's sarcastic or being unironic, but one thing's for sure, this video is looking to be intellectually dishonest.
You're absolutely right. It's a weird point to make because, we have Luke doing basic training over a couple of hours, but he doesn't do lightsaber training at any other time in Star Wars and then beats Darth Vader in a lightsaber fight, right? And I don't see that as being problematic because, we do assume he trained in between the films, but we also... we did see Rey practicing with the lightsaber. We saw Sabine practicing with the lightsaber. We've seen Ezra practicing with the lightsaber. We've seen, in Obi-Wan, we saw a training session with Anakin and Obi-Wan. I feel like we've seen more lightsaber training than any other time period.
Yeah. Also, we didn't even
Ahsoka training with lightsaber.
We didn't even need that training session with Obi-Wan and Anakin. They're the least. They're the people you least expect to show training, because you already know them. They're really good. They're Anakin's one of the best warriors in the Order. Obi-Wan as well. But it's proof that some of these training sequences happen for narrative purpose, right? And so we have some in the chat saying Star Wars should be exclusively male power fantasy, which is just a sarcasm. James Kenobi says fun family fantasy adventure. A series about bringing back Natalie Portman from the dead with a soft, tender kiss from a kitty with spooky, glowing eyes.
I love it.
James Kenobi says, "Oh, and talent card, quota met, right on."
Yeah, talent card. It should just be the talent card show. Let's bring him in.
To be fair, I've never heard of this creator before. I actually haven't either. The first time I've heard about them was last week when I was sent their video on hyperspace lore, and we did that one. And so we're continuing with.
And while we were doing it, we saw this one, and we
Yeah.
were like, you know what? Let's check it out.
But more importantly than knowing the creator, this video got close to 70,000 views, and that's 70,000 people potentially that have bought into his rhetoric. And so we want to debunk any of the lightsaber lore that he puts forth as being authoritative or accurate. Because
By the way, it doesn't have to be bad videos. If you guys want to see us, react to or check out other videos, let us know. Send them to us, and they can be good or they can be this.
also, I saw you guys in chat last week before I was leaving for my concert. Yes, we're live. We're talking to you guys. This isn't a premiere. All right, let's get into this.
You are told you have to show your Jedi doing some training. Here's a very brief summary of lightsaber combat forms. I know, it's going to be so boring, but trust me, understanding this little bit of history is really going to help you to subvert it much more accurately when writing your story. Now, there were 7 predominant lightsaber combat forms recognized by the Jedi Council at the time of the Clone Wars, and throughout the course of his or her or their or Zer's apprenticeship,
That was rude.
Jedi would be able to choose from one of these forms to focus their studies on and work towards gaining mastery in. Each of these forms represented a different combat philosophy, some geared more towards the offensive and some...
even though I feel like was Luminara a practitioner of Sarisu? I feel like Depa was.
Luminara? I for some reason my mind goes to Ataru for her, but
That's why I'm paused on the screen, because it looks like she's trying to go Sarisu.
Well, but I'm pretty sure everyone trains Sarisu.
Yeah,
that's
but
that's where you start, and then you gradually pick up other forms. And so, like, what he's already saying is kind of incorrect. It's not like you pick a form to master. You learn the basics, and then depending on where you are with your basics, they'll be like, okay, you should go to this, or your style is like this, or like Yoda, you're tiny, you have little short baby arms, so you're gonna need to do more acrobatics so that you can do what you need to do, or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like all of the forms, you gain a certain mastery in it, but each form has a very, very high skill ceiling to be masters in. I'm going to go out on a limb and say most Star Wars fans find the forms at least a little bit interesting. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you.
Funnily enough, the forms. Another thing that I should have predicted for the video is this video is not going to understand that the expanded universe, that Legends wasn't canon.
Reacting to Melvin's vids would be endless comedy. Well, we could do that, yeah.
These forms represented a different combat philosophy, some geared more towards the offensive and some designed more for the defensive. And whichever form a Jedi chose to specialize in said a lot about how they viewed their role as a Jedi and how they saw the world around them. I know, super lame, right? Just do your best to stay awake. Starting off with Form 1, this is the most basic form of lightsaber combat, and it's where all Padawans begin. This is where you learn the fundamentals of how to move with the weapon, larger sweeping motions, wide, steady swings, proper stances, that sort of thing. And while
I'm assuming he's getting all of these details from the Jedi Path, because none of these finer details are explicitly said.
Or in canon, yeah.
This was usually seen as beginner stuff, and most Jedi moved on after gaining proficiency with this form. You do run across a few who took a special interest in it, Master Kit Fisto probably being the most prominent among them. It's too bad he never learned any other forms, though, otherwise he might have lasted longer than 0.2 seconds against Old Man in a Dress.
He lasted
one of the best duelists.
Yeah.
I forget who said it, right?
Know what he's talking about.
I forget who said it, but I think it was Mace Windu or somebody on the council said that Kit Fisto was one of the best duelists.
One of their finest duelists, for sure.
And I'm not gonna like push back on this scene because it did make him look like a complete, like it made him look free, but.
It's a badly choreographed scene, right? We've gotten fill-in lore to say that there was a forced scream and a stun people and that's that stuff, and that's fine, but like the choreography in Star Wars has never been perfect.
I like my fill-in lore.
It is.
I like my fill-in lore from Glass Abyss where Mace used Jack's Vapad to survive in such tight quarters.
Tight corner, yeah.
Form 2 is all about finesse, designed for one-on-one dueling, like a fencer. Count Dooku was a master of Form 2, being so committed to maximizing the efficiency in it that he had a custom-made lightsaber hilt that curves a little to the right, allowing him to manipulate the weapon much more ergonomically and with blazing speed. At least I think that's why it's curved like that.
Did George even care about the forms? So the forms were actually first introduced in Legends. When George wrote this stuff, he didn't have forms.
Yeah. So basically, the forms came later and backfilled stuff. So it's interesting now, and as fans, we still love it. Forms weren't brought into canon until Rebels, though. So that's the first time it's actually mentioned in a canon project.
Yeah.
Or it could just be genetics. A curved hilt isn't all that uncommon, after all. Apparently about 20% of the population has at least a little curve in their hilt.
Oh.
And some people even claim to prefer it. I know Star Wars theory.
I was like, is he Wikipedia that?
Yeah, no. That's a joke.
He has a curved hilt he likes to show off from time to time. Form 3 focuses more on defense. It was originally designed to protect against volleys of incoming blaster bolts, but as General Kenobi showed, it's also effective against heavily armed opponents. Emphasis on armed. Now, Form 4 is for the...
No, it's not emphasis on heavily armed opponents. It's also the form that is used for countering and
yeah, that was just a pun.
I know.
The fancy-footed, involving a lot of jumping and acrobatics to overwhelm and confuse enemies. Form 5 featured more powerful overhead attacks and was favored by taller fighters such as Vader and Qui-Gon, who were able to use their physical presence to quickly gain the upper hand over weaker enemies. Ahsoka also used...
Wait. Did he just... Qui-Gon didn't use 5.
Qui-Gon used Ataru.
Yeah. Does it matter if George made them before, if we all enjoy learning, discussing them? It doesn't really matter now, but it's part of canon now.
I mean, we're just answering the question. I'm not saying it's good or bad,
I feel like George didn't take Star Wars half as seriously as half of the fan base now. And he really didn't. His whole thing with Star Wars was the message of the dark side and joy, pleasure, drugs, like addiction.
The fight against fascism.
His more social sciences and political stances. It was never truly his magnum opus on fantasy. But as with all franchises, the fans have taken it and, the fans, which I'm now including in the current writers, the current storytellers now, have turned it into something galactic. And I love lightsaber forms. Every time we see lightsaber combat on a show, the Acolyte, Ahsoka, I'm pointing out that, Balin uses Ataru at this point while, Ahsoka is using Jar-Kai. And then, there was a new one introduced in Ahsoka called Zatoichi.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, I don't know if they gave that a form number, but like It's all awesome lore to me.
I mean, one of the coolest things ever. If you've read the Revenge of the Sith novelization, if you haven't read it, go read it. It's fantastic. But like, one of the coolest things in that is the fight on the Invisible Hand against Count Dooku. And like they are, and Obi-Wan and Anakin are kind of playing around with Count Dooku at the beginning, and then they switch fighting styles, and start going off on him, and it's such a cool scene.
Forms are cool as far as describing what we see on screen. I don't really think they need to factor in storytelling or anything like that. No, not necessarily. Marcus DeWu says it makes sense George did not give much thought to form, since didn't he have a lot of trouble with lightsaber fighting in the originals? So the depth with which George thought about lightsabers and sword forms was mimicking Japanese katana two-handed sword play. And then when going to the prequels, it was like they need to be faster and they need to be wielded with one hand. So let's just make it faster, like a lot of FEMA. Not FEMA. HEMA. And so that's as far as he went, you know.
Also, you also had the limitations of the original, like Darth Vader suit for their fighting, but it kind of plays into the story, right? Because Obi-Wan was in control of that entire fight, and he's like poking and prodding and like, come chase me over here, you know.
Yeah.
Love that.
And the
fight.
first time we saw Yoda fight and doing all those flips, it was like, oh, that's just how Yoda fights. But then like you add in like you backfill the lore to be like Ataru has a lot of acrobatics. And you're like, dang, he's got a really cool lightsaber form. You know, it's just stuff like that.
5 featured more powerful overhead attacks and was favored by taller fighters such as Vader and Qui-Gon, who were able to use their physical
Vader used Gemso and Qui-Gon used Ataru
presence to quickly gain the upper hand over weaker enemies. Ahsoka also used a variation of this form, substituting quick, nimble attacks for the heavy overhead ones, and with great success. Animated Ahsoka, of course. Old Lady Ahsoka, well, we'll get to that in a bit. Form 6...
No, you just... Live action doesn't translate to the animation style.
Animation, yeah, it's not the same because humans can't do that. Even when they mocapped things for season 7
they hand
animated it because they use the real motions as the basis, but it was nowhere close to a 1-to-1. Like early fights in the Clone Wars are actually kind of weird looking because they're very like swoopy and fast. But, you know, let's still enjoy it.
Yeah. Legacy asks, what was the sequel approach to forms? Those fights mostly feel very different than the other trilogies. Things with the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy didn't really deal with forms too much, if at all, because Luke was learning from, you know, texts and, you know, spirits. As far as we know in canon, right? And what he learned from Yoda was more kind of force mastery and philosophy and stamina stuff. We didn't really see him train in swords. Swords.
I mean, the whole purpose was that in the prequel time period, when the Jedi were closer to the height of their power, you know, you would have these kids that grew up practicing these moves constantly and consistently. You know, contrast this with someone who at age, you know, 19 started picking it up. You know, Luke is all force and all, you know, dirty fighting, dirty kicks and stuff. Which I think works.
And to go into the sequel trilogy, Rey doesn't know any forms either. She learns as much as she can from Leia and Luke, but again, Luke is the originator of, you know, learning through YouTube, and Ben is also a product of that training. But largely Ben or Kylo is a product of his instability. So his lightsaber fighting isn't indicative of any classical training, as we see when he has the Skywalker saber in Rise of Skywalker. He finally gets it. Then you can see some kind of form to his fighting, and he's more fluid, he's more spinny, you know, he's flashy. But for the most part, the fights in the sequels didn't really have any forms. They were largely just kind of like winging it. And that's not to say like winging it in terms of filmmaking, but like they didn't have the knowledge of the prequel Jedi and those before them with classical training.
I mean, Luke, for a large portion of like Return of the Jedi, swings his lightsaber like it's a baseball bat. You know,
he learned from
I think
Creel.
Yeah, Sergeant Creel is one of the people, and then later there's a guy on an island. Luke gets like stuck on there, and he teaches him like techniques and stuff, and then he has to fight Creel again. In that same run, I can't remember the person's name, but yeah, I mean there was a lot of stuff in between that helped ended up helping Luke, but it's still not the same formal training that these kids went through from birth. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. Like, to me, this represents kind of like when we use lightsabers, like in real life. We're learning spinning. We're doing, we're doing Obianis. We're doing all this stuff. And then, people in our comments are like, you can't do this in a real fight. And you're like, so what? Like, I'm not going to fight people with real lightsabers. That's how the Jedi thought.
I feel like
felt.
I feel like if we were all to have a fight with lightsabers, considering our sources are largely the same, we would be Obi-Wan and Anakin in that fight, doing Obi-Annie spins in front of each other and just not having any real combat intention in our fights.
But like, you can look at fencing competitions, and people have lightsaber fighting leagues, and in order to do well, they don't fight like they do in the prequels.
They'll have
they'll
have the
because
lightsaber
that's
out, and then they'll go like this and go try to hit the wrists.
Yeah, because that. What we see in the prequels is really cool. It's just not how it's not how fighting works. I love, seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin, Obi-Annie back and forth in front of each other, and we can make our own headcanon of like, they're having like a mental battle. Oh, I'll swing here. Oh no, but if I do that, he'll do this and this, But really, that would never happen in a fight. It's kind of like when people think, Souls is how people fight, and you can roll around on the ground. And like, it looks cool. That's not how it works. People don't have iframes.
KG says, I know I'm in the minority with preferring the sequel fight style. I mean, so I don't really have a preference towards them, but I love those fights because they are emotionally charged. The Death Star 2 fight in particular with no music was so heavy.
And that was actually George's main thing, is the fights need to tell a story. You know what I mean? Like, we had that throne room fight. There was a much, much cooler version of the Mace Windu versus Palpatine fight. And we can find, maybe on the VOD, we can put up footage of that. It was going to be a lot cooler, but George was like, no, I want to be able to show the actors' faces.
Yeah.
Right? And Ian McDermott can't do that, so we're not doing it.
I get
that's how we got him going.
I also encourage people to, like, this isn't how I want people to experience these movies, but if you've watched these movies before, particularly with any fight with Sidious and Mace Windu, or Sidious and Palpatine, whatever, go frame by frame. You can see clearly the 3D avatar that's fighting in place of Ian McDermott in some of these wide shots. It's horrible CGI, but thankfully with editing, you don't see too much of it. But this is what we mean by, like, if you go frame by frame on any movie, you're gonna find mistakes, and you find those mistakes like when he's like turning around, you can see like a face turning with like 20 frames per second CG, and you're like, oh, that's not Ian McDermott at all. You can see it on Dooku as well. Christopher Lee's face was grafted onto someone else, doing more of the physical aspects of the fights. But
I mean, he was like 80. Like, we love Christopher Lee. This isn't trying to like pull anyone down, but this is just how it works.
is sort of a master of none form, combining principles from all the previous 5 forms into one diverse, well-rounded, but ultimately less powerful and less unique combination.
I would suggest, if you guys want more canon and accurate descriptions of these forms, to get Force and Destiny. It is a canon source book, but it is for the Star Wars RPG, but it's still canon. And so you have a very, very robust description of each form and what they mean in canon.
Combination of moves. And this became the standard for most Jedi at the height of the Old Republic, where combat was less common, and a Swiss Army knife of attacks that can handle most situations was seen as more practical than one powerful style that had to compensate for its weaknesses in other areas. And lastly, we have forms.
Why'd you show Yoda? Because Yoda can combat every single situation. I mean, like, if you take someone like Yoda and compare him to, like, I don't know, Ki-Adi-Mundi, who just turns around and just stares at everyone. Yoda was like, nah, I ain't gonna give these guys a chance, and just slices their heads off. He's like, I sense your murderous intent and will not let you go.
Okay. Quick question. What's the over-under that he thinks that Mace Windu uses the dark side?
Okay, yeah, that's another one.
7,
Is
which
he
at this point was all.
Is he going to say that Mace Windu uses the dark side, or is he going to know Star Wars?
He probably is going to say that he uses it, yeah.
All but banned by the Jedi Council, as it had the undesirable tendency to push one to the dark side by utilizing fear and anger, both yours and your opponents, to fuel a wild and terrifying flurry of powerful blows. Mace Windu used his own homebrew variation of Form 7, which is part of what allowed him to overcome old Palpatine, but the standard form was most famously used by Darth Maul in his fights against Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. This powerful, chaotic, unpredictable form, combined with his use of the two-bladed lightsaber, is what allowed him to hold off both Jedi for as long as he did. Now, don't forget, no one
No, it's just because he was a good fighter.
Yeah.
actually wants to see.
The funny thing too is, like, I love lightsaber staff, but it is the least effective thing of all time. Like, it's not a good weapon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a whole. That's bringing realism into Star Wars that doesn't need to be there.
Marcus Abu says such a cover. He was evil. I sensed it. I mean, it is. Could you imagine a deleted scene where Yoda just like leaps up and decapitates those two, and then like Chewie's like, "What did you just do?" And he's like, "They were
Those
evil.
were my friends.
They were evil. Sensed it. I did. Stop looking at me."
Any of this represented in live action. That would be insane. I mean, could you imagine if we made a whole show revolving around a master teaching his Padawans the way of lightsaber combat? That would be like Cobra Kai in space, and nobody wants to see that. Again, I'm only explaining all of this to you so
Listen, I love Cobra Kai, but their karate sucks.
that you A, know how to subvert it, and B, use as little of it as possible, just enough to satisfy your mandate. A classic example of this comes from The Last Jedi, where some people complained about how the what's her name? The junk trader girl. God, this is embarrassing.
Okay, you're being a little dumb.
We have a whole movie coming out for her and everything, and I'm the head writer. Why can't I remember her name? Oh well, we'll just go with Junk Trader Girl for now. When The Last Jedi came out, some people complained about how Junk Trader Girl had quote-unquote no combat training before she fought a bunch of elite soldiers in a wildly outnumbered, impossible-to-win fight, even though we literally showed her training with Jedi Master Rock, the most famous rock Jedi who ever lived. That scene was amazing and not cringe, so I don't even know what they were complaining about. But
Okay, so he is being sarcastic when he brings this stuff up. She was shown in the beginning of The Force Awakens to have predisposed combat ability by fighting off, and for 14 years, other scavengers. But the establishing shot was in the first act of The Force Awakens, where she fights off the people trying to take BB-8. Now, that coupled with the very intentional eye looking from staff to saber, you know, if you look at the nuances of filmmaking, you can see that she is putting two and two together and being like, maybe I can do some kind of lever translation.
How is this going to translate from this to that? And then they showed us. So it's weird.
But also,
to say that they should show training and then show her training and say, but I don't like seeing her train. So this is a bad. I don't know. I don't know what that point is.
But also the throne room scene, she didn't even show that much mastery. She was fighting 2, Kylo was fighting 5, and she gets hit multiple times by the 2. Right? Like,
yeah.
people like to prop Rey up as having been displayed as being the master of lightsaber forms without any training. No, she just had previous combat experience, had some luck with translating the lever training of a staff to the saber, and
had
also,
access to the Force.
Yeah, and also trained with Luke. We didn't see the whole training, but Luke looked at her training once in the film. We could probably kind of assume that at some point he instructed her.
Yeah, but I just want to say, I mean, more importantly, once you know how to freely access the Force, right? That's going to be a massive buff in all aspects, and that was the whole point of her training. She did it before against Kylo Ren, but that was like a one-off, and she had to learn how to actually access it on a regular basis.
Montreal says that's why her dark side self uses a saber staff, because she's experienced with the staff. Honestly, watching these channels, it's like they've never actually seen Star Wars and are making arguments about something they know nothing about. We like to call them carpet nuggets. We also like to call them tourists, because they're here just to make money. And for the most part, every time we react to something that they're talking about, it seems like they have not watched the movie.
Jay Bird says, I actually don't think Rey wins a battle without supernatural intervention. Yeah, that's true. She doesn't win a single fight in all of Star Wars without outside help. And when she finally does against Palpatine, she died.
And honestly, that wasn't... Yeah. I wouldn't even chalk that up as a victory for Rey either. Like, even though she technically won. I like to play with these semantics. Like in The Force Awakens, Rey didn't beat Kylo. Kylo lost. And that's largely because he forced himself into a situation that was disadvantageous. But in The Rise of Skywalker, Rey
he also stopped fighting her. Like she was dead to rights against a cliff.
And in The Rise of Skywalker, Rey did what Mace did. He was looping the electricity back, and Palpatine, for all of his bluster, just didn't stop. So he kind of fried himself.
Yeah.
In response to
wasn't she subconsciously channeling some of Kylo's knowledge via the Dyad in the throne room?
Yes.
So she had already connected to that. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is when you see her fighting against the Rock, the moves that she does against the Rock are the same moves that Kylo Ren does later in the movie against Luke.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that detail.
Yeah, and if you read the novelization, it goes further into detail about how the closer they are to each other, the more power and more knowledge is shared between the two. So when they're fighting in the throne room, they are connected, and she is feeding off of Kylo's energy and knowledge in that regard.
Criticism: the executives mandated that the very first thing we see her doing in the next movie is training, which we accomplished by showing her floating with some rocks and performing a bit of light calisthenics.
That's not light calisthenics at all.
She was jumping up trees and slash things and if that's light calisthenics, then what other training have we seen? Because Luke did a flip over a rock and swung on a vine. But we know he was. So what is good training? What good training is there in Star? I don't know. We can keep going.
Boom, training, easy. Fans were so happy to see that scene. Probably, or not, I don't actually care. This is a writing concept we use all the time here at Disney when we're told we have to add something in to appease the fans. It's called malicious compliance. Oh, you think it would be cool to see this thing represented in a big budget production? You think it would make sense for that to happen? No, fine, we'll do it, but you bet your ass we're going to integrate it in the most non-diegetic, awkward, clunky way possible. Now, that'll teach you to ask for stuff.
How was it non-diegetic and clunky? Like, it showed us that she excelled at some things, but she, the be with me technique eluded her, and she was struggling with that. And that it also showed us her anger getting the best of her during the training, and not knowing why. Like, there was a lot of story reasons for it. And so this is kind of the problem, is when you don't honestly engage with it, you miss so much. And it's just crazy.
Yeah, I feel like this guy just like uses words but doesn't know what they mean, and then uses movies and doesn't know what the hell they're about and uses lore and doesn't understand it.
Anyway, now that you know a bit about the history of lightsaber combat, let's get into the writing side of things. Now, the first thing you want to do here is make sure that all physics are just completely thrown out the window. See, with a traditional sword, you're typically relying on the blade's weight to drive your movement, and then using the counterweight in the pommel to balance it out. And while your muscles are definitely involved with guiding the blade toward the right place, the laws of gravity and inertia have just as much to do with the power behind these maneuvers as the strength of the wielder does.
Oh, I totally forgot.
Yeah, that doesn't apply to lightsabers.
I totally forgot he was gonna. That was another argument that they were going to make. He's probably going to make the argument that there's no weight in the lightsaber, right? And we're going to say, well, according to Kanan, so we'll see.
And this was not the case with lightsabers. Remember all those nerds who worked on the original movies and wrote the old books? Well, they seem to think that since a lightsaber's blade is made of light, which has no mass, that would mean that the lightsaber itself has no mass, aside from the hilt.
Not true.
Which would mean that...
No, I think George was the first one to say that these things are heavy.
Yeah, so George initially said that this was Excalibur, and it was a heavy, and that's why you needed two hands on it at all times. Like, so yeah, no, it was. But tell George he's wrong about lightsabers. I guess I don't know.
That the entire economy of motion would be dictated by your wrists and arms, maneuvering just the hilt to angle the blade. This is why you had to have your Padawans train with real lightsabers instead of, say, wooden swords, which, as I established...
They weren't real, they were training sabers.
Yeah, those are training sabers. And then also, people did train with bokens and things like that through all time.
Before have a drastically different weight distribution than lightsabers. If lightsabers are effectively weightless, but you have your Padawans training with heavy wooden swords, then all of the muscle memory and strength training they're building up with these exercises would be completely useless once they transition to using real lightsabers.
No.
That's also not true. Also, those are not heavy.
He's also showing Acolyte because it's clearly an infraction in the lore, but if we go back to the younglings in the Gathering arc, we see Petro and the other younglings practicing with sticks.
Now, if you want an example of how this would feel, just grab your nearest sword-like weapon, a broom handle or something, and swing it around a few times. Then grab your nearest hilt-like object and wave it around. See the difference? See how strange it feels to try and strike without the weight of a blade at the end?
This guy has zero martial training. Zero. The point of training with boken or with facsimiles of the blade is to train you in indexing, vectoring, angles, and movement and footwork. You get to train with like the real weight of it through practical means, but like that stuff's not useless. You have to train with the basics first. You can't start with the real weight of a sword, because then you're never going to get the feel of the proper form.
You see how this could understand?
Also, you would want to use like lightweight sticks and things like that if you were sparring, for instance, at certain levels.
Trust me, if you get like a katana and then try to train kenjutsu all with a katana, you're gonna fail horribly.
Understandably take years of training to become competent with, to be able to angle the blade in just the right way to block an incoming attack without cutting your own damn head off. This is what made the weapon so unwieldy for those who were untrained in the art of lightsaber combat, but made it the perfect pairing for a Jedi Knight, whose years of martial training combined with their connection to the Force gave them an almost supernatural ability to divorce their physical movements from their logical brain, which sees a blade and expects to have to compensate for its weight. Instead, they allowed the Force to influence each and every movement, reaching an almost meditative state in which they were able to intercept and deflect blaster bolts with perfect accuracy and duel with unrivaled precision, agility, focus, and speed, almost faster than thought. This truly was an elegant weapon from a more civilized age. So yeah, you can just take all of that nonsense and just get rid of it. The lightsabers in your story should feel like they weigh at least 30 to 35 pounds, with the majority of that weight placed right at the tip, at the worst possible balance point, so that you're...
No.
Why does he think the weight is at the tip? I don't even understand. Did he not watch Star Wars? Did he not watch the original trilogy? Did he not watch, Luke on the sandbarge swinging his lightsaber?
I just read Jay Bird saying, wait, the Acolyte has a white teacher? I thought movie had no white people. I don't know where he's getting this, but George...
His booty hole.
George was the first one to say that lightsabers had weight. And then we get the training sequence with Sabine and Kanan, where Kanan says, imagine directing a flow of energy, right? So, which means the lever is at your hand. The same as a sword, right? Because the flow of energy is being propelled through the crystal towards the sword. And so that's acting as the counterweight pommel. And then the energy that's being cycled through the cycler is constantly, lightsabers have weight.
Imagine having a powerful, water hose in your hand and trying to fight with that.
But there's no termination point. It goes back into this hose. Guys, I'm sorry you have to watch this. Nothing like armchair experts critiquing fantasy universes based on reality they don't even know. Yes. But luckily, we have in-universe examples. So we are armchair experts. But we actually cite the sources and know where it comes from, rather than, kind of just making random postulations and expecting people to believe us.
Yeah. Your characters have
Speaking
to
of
keep them
lightsabers, are you excited that Disney's dropping the Gunji saber? I didn't see that, and that's gonna have to hurt my wallet a little bit. So that's okay.
Oh my gosh, there's so much things to buy, not enough money to go around.
Like battle axes, not the one-handed riding axes of the Rohirrim. I'm talking big two-handed dwarven axes. Now, you do have to be careful with this, because it could have the potential to look cool when used by larger, more muscular characters. So you want to make sure you mostly cast wafy young women in these roles instead.
Yeah, this guy is just... Okay, so he's misogynistic, obviously, because from his hyperspace video, he was talking about fallopian tubes and all that. None of this is intellectually honest or in good faith at all. It's not even funny if he was just trying to make a joke out of it. It's just wrong.
I mean, that joke would have killed on Xbox Live in 2003. So.
Less muscle tone, the better. Really have them show in their faces how much effort it takes them to bring these weightless weapons around to bear. And throw in some guttural grunts and growls, too, for good measure. Forget about the composed...
Well, if in Rey's case... She literally doesn't have all of the training. She
wasn't trained. Yeah.
She doesn't have all of the training that others that you're showing on screen had. Even in the Acolyte, those people had classical training. I would argue more so than the prequel Jedi we see.
Wait. So So Rey was less composed than a Jedi Master?
Yeah.
Jesus.
What is it? Is she OP or is she less composed? What do you can't have both of them.
She's Schrodinger's Jedi. She is the most powerful and well-trained person, but she's so weak and has never trained. She Schrodinger's Jedi.
I beg your finest pardon, fallopian tubes. So last week we reacted to this person's video on hyperspace lore, which was largely actually 100% inaccurate and mistaken. And they equated hyperspace lanes to fallopian tubes as a misogynistic joke. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we should have steeled ourselves for this kind of outcome, but I'm hoping. No, I don't know if I'm.
It was the confident cadence, the natural flow and rhythm of yesterday's duels. Instead, have your characters screech their frustrations out, like we writers do at our weekly Scream therapy sessions. This will make your fights feel more gritty and visceral, which segues us nicely into talking about lightsaber damage. Now,
so to address that notion, this seems to be a very rampant misunderstanding of how the narrative has been designed. As George said, the lightsaber fighting changed in the prequels because it was a time in which the Jedi were at the height of their martial prowess. So we see a lot of people with classical training doing fancy spins and flips and stuff, and the fighting is flashy. When you get to the original trilogy and Luke has limited access to training, and then he pushes forward that training to Kylo, who then shares a connection with Rey, all of those lightsaber wielders will be less sound than the people with classical training. So we need to stop this nonsense that the sequel fights were just terrible to be terrible. First of all, they're not terrible, but second of all, they are purposefully fighting that way because they don't have the training that prequel Jedi did. Stop it.
Now, with lightsaber damage these days, you're really going to want to turn that way the hell down, actually. I know we can see references from the old movies where lightsabers are incredibly powerful.
Sure, yeah, like that. Like that attack that took Darth Vader's arm off. It didn't take his arm off.
Effortlessly cutting through thick metal, even blast doors, and cutting down armored battle droids as if they were paper, slicing off limbs like it's their day job. But that's a little too graphic for modern audiences, so make sure that the lightsabers in your story just kind of bounce off of even the most basic types of armor.
Those aren't basic types of armor either. Let me get the visual dictionary.
Listen, if you don't know what you're talking about, everything is confusing. So I think that's kind of where we're at with it. But let's see. In the comics, Luke even makes grunts and groans when using his lightsaber. Yeah, absolutely. You know, just like people accessing their emotion. You know, it's literally it's part of the story. That's part of the narrative that's being told. And it seems like some of these people don't want a story. They don't want a narrative. They want a lightsaber exhibition more than anything else. And that's just not what Star Wars has ever been, and not what it should be.
I'm back, don't worry. All right, this is the visual dictionary, guys. On the Praetorian Guards, their armor is a magnetic field bolstered armor, and guess what the lightsabers are encased in? A magnetic field. And guess what happens when you shoot a blaster or swing a lightsaber in a magnetically sealed environment?
Which is something we saw in the trash compactor in the original trilogy.
Yes.
in A New Hope. Yeah. So it's all it's all been
Basic
very
types of armor.
meticulously like taken care of.
Oh no, I lost my spot. Hold on. There, basic types of armor. Okay.
And have a slice across the face, just leave little tiny burn marks on the skin, easily recoverable.
I'll grant him this. The scar from The Force Awakens was really cool, and when they minimized it,
They moved it. Yeah.
I mean, it looks cool there, but I don't agree with that. They should have changed the scar.
But that's not what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He so if you hit something, if you play America's favorite game, which is Just the Tip, if Just the Tip scores your face, then that's all that happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people seem to think that if a lightsaber touches you, that limb flies off, but it depends on how deep it cut. That's why, Dooku slashed Obi-Wan's leg and his arm, and they didn't fall off because they were just merely a flesh wound. They were light grazes, just like this, and just like when Kylo Ren scored up Finn's back.
Yeah. Also, it's a misconception that lightsabers emit heat, but all of that is again captured within their magnetic field. And it's only when they kind of like stick it into like a piece of metal that the metal is penetrating that field. That's when it like burns through and melts things.
But even that's not the lightsaber heat. That's the residual heat from the metal.
Yeah. That makes them so much cooler. Are you talking about the Praetorian Guards? Are we about to get Praetorian Guard lore? We can. I mean, I can get back to that page, but let's get through this.
As long as you're a main character. Of course, if an extra even gets touched by a lightsaber, make sure they flail around and die on the floor immediately, especially if the damage was nowhere near a vital organ, okay? Oh, and speaking of vital organs, I know the toxic fan...
Wait, are you going to show an actual example from Star Wars? That they flail around?
So if an extra even gets touched by a lightsaber, make sure they flail around and die on the floor immediately.
No, you're not.
Especially
right?
if the damage was nowhere near a vital organ, okay? Oh, and speaking of vital organs, I know the toxic fans have made this next point into a meme or whatever, but lightsabers to the chest or stomach legitimately do not kill you anymore, we decided. Yes, we know.
Being cut across the stomach didn't kill you either.
Yeah, again, a lightsaber is a less lethal device than a regular sword would be because it cauterizes the wound. If you're in the same situation as like Qui-Gon, where the lightsaber goes through your spine, your experience may vary, but then again, Darth Maul got better. He called on the dark side to sustain him, but still. That was still weird.
The point stands is that we have plenty of examples of people surviving lightsabers. Before Disney.
And I know, plenty of people survived it before Disney. We also have cases like the one he showed where the Grand Inquisitor has two stomachs. That's part of his species, and that was literally like what the story was. And then we also have cases like Sabine, who was stabbed off to the side and got medical help like instantly.
Yeah. And you can see it if you go frame by frame. It is a stomach stab. It's not center mass like Qui-Gon. And if he's gonna bring up a acolyte, we're just gonna preemptively debunk that. Like, it's a knife to the heart. You're not gonna survive that.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, that sort of injury seemed like kind of a big deal or whatever, but...
Look how center mass that is. That is through the spine.
Getting stabbed is a cheap dramatic...
Oh, we can see it here. Look how far off to the side that is.
They painfully showed us that that's not a lethal stab.
And it's also...
people are like...
It's also showing that Shin is still training. Like, she's not a perfect, swordsman.
Is a cheap dramatic beat that...
And again,
I just
Ahsoka
wanted to pause it
arrives
here for Natasha.
Ahsoka arrives like seconds later to take her to get medical help, and it still wrecked her, and she was out for a hot minute.
Yeah.
That we can play off of without having to commit to any sort of content.
See, that's where it is. You can get shot there too and survive that gunshot wound.
Consequence for it. And there's actually no limit on.
Oh, look, there's Cal. Same spot, actually, a little
Cal,
bit further
yeah.
up.
No limit on how many characters you can do this with, or even how many times per character. It's free real estate. On that note, let's pivot away from writing for a brief moment and talk about casting your characters. As I mentioned earlier, the days of casting strong, dexterous, athletic actors who have clearly put a great deal of effort into learning how.
What? I wouldn't call you and Hayden strong and athletic. They trained for these roles. They didn't.
Yeah, they weren't strong.
They
and
weren't
athletic
athletes
when they got them.
People will eventually bring up Reva. She used the dark side to keep herself alive. You know, it's because all of these examples exist. It's because we have so much Star Wars. They weren't able to do this back then.
How to fight are over. That shit's for nerds, and besides, nobody even notices anyway. The only thing they're looking at are the pretty colors, so just cast anybody. Seriously, anyone. Give them a stick and tell them to have at it. Don't worry about form or poise or strength discrepancies. If an actor forgets they're carrying a weapon, that would
Wait.
allow them
So
to
they don't think Eunice is a strong athletic actor, or Chewbacca? That's crazy. We also have like actual like martial artists in the Acolyte, and they're not strong or athletic.
I mean, if anybody is strong and athletic, it would be Daphne and Manny.
Yeah.
The fight, don't worry about it. We'll just Epstein it in post. Oh, and speaking of extras, if we don't care who you cast as your main characters, you bet your ass we don't give two flying fucks who's in the suits for the faceless bad guys. Hell,
well, they're faceless because Palpatine's the bad guy.
Did you guys care who was in all the Stormtrooper armor and stuff? No? That's such a weird point to bring up.
Has Theory made a single positive video in the last 2 years? I'm not sure, but this is Max of Zorro.
Yeah.
well, you can come grab the two homeless guys that live outside my apartment. They fight each other all the time. Not because I pay them to or anything. That's what they like to do. The last thing to...
Oh, now it's making me cringe how try-hard his humor is.
remember when writing for lightsabers in Disney Star Wars is make sure you avoid setting up any sort of emotional payoffs or meaningful reasons for your fights to be happening in the first place. And this one is key. See, in the old, outdated, culturally irrelevant Star Wars, every single lightsaber fight was a dramatic climax for the characters involved, and for the story at large. And all of the intrigue and tension built up across the whole movie came to a head as the two opposing philosophical differences clashed in the physical world. The duel...
I love how casually he throws out that lightning. Oh, hello, Obi-Wan. Also, the fight with Palpatine, was that really like an Oscar-worthy moment?
That wasn't the most emotional moment for sure.
and
the fight with Maul also, because like at this point they don't know who that is. They have no beef with them. Like, we understand the significance of that fight from a franchise overall, but like that was not an emotional payoff in this film.
Yeah. Emotional payoffs like Luke versus Kylo in The Last Jedi, Rey versus Kylo in TFA. Bro didn't even try. Again, yeah, he's just not... He's never seen Star Wars before, apparently.
Light versus dark in an epic battle, the crossing of red blades with blue and green, something not seen in the galaxy for 100 years. The fight that...
In
Again.
the galaxy. Who else in the galaxy saw that?
It's a parrot moment right there.
You can't. Jesus. All right.
Dang it, I'm late. You're doing this video. I have words. The VOD will be available, but yeah, have at it in the chat.
that began the Clone Wars and the fight that ended them. The fight between brothers. One consumed by the fear of loss and desire for power, and the other left with the unthinkable task of having to stop him permanently. Two unstoppable masters of swordsmanship facing off in a brilliant blaze of blue and white, resulting in the death of a noble Jedi and the birth of a ruthless villain. Confronting that villain for the first time in 20 years, third time in 10 years. Luke coming face to face with the man who killed his mentor, who had his aunt and uncle murdered in their home, who has the lives of his friends in the palm of his hand, and who he then discovers to be his own father. The final battle in the Emperor's throne room, where Luke momentarily gives in to the temptation of the dark side, before ultimately declaring the truth about his identity and his father's, a declaration that resurrects and redeems Anakin Skywalker in his final moments. These fights were about more than just good versus evil.
Your bias is showing tremendously, because you can describe the fights in the sequel trilogy and in this post
with the same
Disney
way,
era.
yeah.
Like literally, the fight on Death Star 2 was Rey's last chance at trying to cling to the spark of hope that Luke believed, or Leia believed that her son still had, and that Luke had accepted was gone. And
in the meantime, you have Kylo Ren, who's like, you can't go back to my mom now, just like I can't go back. I can't turn back from this, but I'm gonna take you there. And he controls her the entire fight, navigates her all the way to his ship, And then you have Leia, who in the last moment gives up her life in order to give Rey a brief moment. At that moment, Leia, makes that choice. But in that moment, Leia understands what Anakin did in Return of the Jedi. There's so much deep lore involved in those fights as well.
Deep emotion too. Like even after the fight, I would have taken your hand, Ben's hand. Like
the thigh touch. What are we talking about here, man?
Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you guys in the chat, especially if you're new to us. We don't particularly like The Rise of Skywalker, but I'll be damned if we describe those fights as being emotionless.
And that's what it all comes down to. Is you can, no one's saying you have to like this. No one says that you have to like everything from Star Wars. You don't have to like the sequel trilogy at all. That's totally cool. But like, don't be disingenuous with it, and don't lie. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. It's weird, and it's why we can't have good conversations on these, because we have one side that it just refuses to engage intellectually with the medium. You can't. I don't know. There's nothing to do that.
Yeah. Alice says, "What? Luke gave in to the dark side against Vader? I thought he was perfect, and that when he raised the saber to Ben, was acting because of Disney." No, it's all in character. These guys just postulate really, really intellectually dishonest and bad faith arguments. And the bias shows here when he describes with the utmost flowery words these fights, and then reducto ad absurdum for sequel fights.
And then Eric Snelker points out, the Obi-Wan comment was also dumb. Vader's quote was, "When I left you, I was but the learner." Spoiler alert, he was not talking about Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Well, they were about honor, redemption, hope.
Yes, all of that for the sequels too.
Bravery, vengeance, love, pride, betrayal, fear, anger, hate, suffering. How lame is that? People feeling things in movies? People don't watch movies to feel things anymore.
You don't. You clearly watched all of these movies not feeling a damn thing.
People watch movies to not feel things. Don't you get it? They don't want to watch actors give compelling performances. They want Marvel jokes and slapstick humor. They don't care what a character thinks about the world around them. They want substanceless cameos and key jangling. The real world is...
The way you showed Andor...
Did he just...
Right? The way he shows Andor in the same sentence that's critically admonishing the lack of these things is baffling. It literally, if you just see Nani the fuck, like seriously.
That's just too chaotic and toxic right now. Everyone is angry, and since we're all isolated from each other and stuck relying on unfulfilling parasocial relationships and anonymous interactions, all people want from the content.
How are you making this 2 months ago?
Man, I've been outside in the past couple years. You can go outside too, homie. That's the problem. Touch some grass. I don't know where you're at.
I've been to 2 celebrations. I got COVID at one.
And Brad Saber says humor does provoke a feeling, though.
Yes, it does.
That's also true. I'm sad we glaze over that, but yeah. Also, I mean, I suppose some of it is parasocial, but like we have actively hung out and spent time with each other and with you guys, with people in this chat, you know.
Yes.
And also we'd be happy to do it again. If you guys are going to a con or something like that, let us know. We'd love to see you.
When I left you, I was but the soy jack, but now I am the Giga Chad. He is insecure. He's also a tourist. He doesn't know anything about Star Wars, and I say that with the utmost respect to anybody that feels like they are a fake fan, because you guys are all fans if you love Star Wars. But it's really difficult for me to actually utter those words. But in this case, this person does not know anything about Star Wars. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Consume is just more mindless entertainment where they can shut off their brains for 2 hours and stare at some pretty colors. That's it.
Also, if you're watching this, Max of Zorro, at any point, if you happen to land on this video, we would love to have you on Dyad in the Forest. Come on and have a conversation with us.
Yeah.
In an effort to correct your behavior. No, we can have a conversation, but clearly, as far as your videos are concerned, they're very, very dishonest. They're very malicious, and they're very inaccurate. And we would welcome you on to defend your points, but we would utterly destroy those points. So you're still welcome to come on. There are no emotional fights anymore. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the very unemotional fight between Ahsoka and Anakin in the World Between Worlds. Yeah, I mean, like, listen, their narrative is to erase narrative from anything.
What's weird though is he mentioned the cameo thing like it was bad, but like that's what generates emotion on those types of people. Now maybe he doesn't like the cameos. I don't much go for them myself if they feel out of place, or if you rely on a character that's not part of the story's narrative to swoop in and save the day. Always, but like I don't know, it's just weird. It's weird. We can keep going.
That's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to work so hard, Tony. You don't have to put in all that effort. You spent, what, 2 years handcrafting?
Wait, what the hell does Tony Gilroy have to do with this? He was fantastic. Whatever. Jeez, God.
Crafting the story for Andor, making sure every word had impact and every scene had meaning. What a waste of time. Didn't anyone tell you that you can be completely void of substance these days and still be hyper successful? Just look at The Force Awakens, where we took Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, the one used in one of the most precisely choreographed and expertly executed duels in cinema history, handed down as an heirloom and then tragically lost in one of the most dramatic and culturally impactful scenes in cinema history. We took that lightsaber and gave it to a janitor and had him face off against an actual Sith Lord. Guess
he's not a Sith Lord.
Not a Sith Lord.
You know, he doesn't watch he doesn't watch Star Wars. I think that's the most. I think that right there is the most incorrect thing he said.
Okay, so you have a Finn who trained from childhood for combat to be a stormtrooper. And yeah, he was assigned to janitorial stuff, but it doesn't mean he didn't train in combat, in weaponry, and all this stuff forever. And then when he goes out on his first mission, that's when he decides, this ain't the life for him. But like on the other side, Kylo Ren obviously is not a Sith. But if you watch them fight, Kylo Ren's playing with his food. It's not like he ever posed any real threat. And as soon as soon as he got like a lucky strike in there, he just ended it. You know, he ended that man's whole career. I don't know. It was.
Again, this is what they do. It's reducto ad absurdum. They reduce all of these people to the most mind-numbingly empty husks that they can think of. And then they bolster their narrative with incorrect facts like Kylo is a Sith Lord. Not even just Sith. He says Sith Lord. Which is doubly incorrect.
Marcus DeWoo says, okay, I'm going to be mushy. I did wonder if I was a fake fan for a bit because The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. And The Acolyte is my favorite Star Wars show. I got over it, but I did wonder for a bit. Listen, The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars film, and it sounds awesome, right? Because Marcus, it sounds like you are a person that loves storytelling that plays around with narrative, with narrative and with perspective, and that's my jam as well. And if those are the things you like, those are going to be the projects you like. That's how liking things works.
Also, it doesn't really matter what you like or even you dislike. If you dislike The Last Jedi, so long as you guys are talking to us in the way you guys have been talking to us. Right now, we are roasting the hell out of this person who has largely been, for the most part, all the way incorrect about everything. But, if you guys dislike a project, we can have a conversation about it. But if it devolves into stuff like this, it's dumb.
Guess what happens? He gets his fucking spine melted. Then we proceeded to give the lightsaber to Junk Trader Girl. And by give the lightsaber to Junk Trader Girl, I mean we literally wrote it so that she's suddenly able to use force telekinesis to grab it. She's also suddenly able...
Yeah, no, she didn't pull it. The lightsaber went to her. This is the thing that we always talk about when it comes to media literacy. You can see that Kylo is also pulling it as well. He didn't lose to Rey. It just veered away from him. That's why this has emotional impact when he finally gets it back in The Rise of Skywalker as Ben. Because the reason the lightsaber called to her, it calls to you. The reason it called to her was because she, Rey, represented Ben's light. And as soon as he got it back, the lightsaber went to Ben.
Not only that, but he didn't get his spine melted. We actually see the jacket later and can trace where the swipe went, and it wasn't on his spine, and it also just scored him.
Yeah.
Able to hold her own against the Sith Lord.
You're saying this in the same sentence she's being pushed back?
Yeah, no, she's getting demolished throughout the scene. Go back.
Even though just
she's in full flight, full
use force telekinesis to grab it. She's also suddenly able to hold her own against the Sith Lord, even though just like the janitor, she's never held a lightsaber. You would think that someone
that line's in The Last Jedi for a reason. It wasn't just there to be there. They're literally acknowledging that he should not have lost. They're acknowledging that he was unstable. So y'all just heard that line, see? No. Gosh. First, she can hold her own by being pushed back to the brink, to the edge, to the cliff, literally. And then second, she shouldn't have been able to do that because she's never held a lightsaber because Snoke says so. Not really taking into account that line is there specifically to explain why.
Yep. Do you think he's going to acknowledge that he also was just shot in the side with a bowcaster and was bleeding out?
No.
Do you think he's going to acknowledge that?
Someone with no combat experience. See that these are the reductos we're talking about. They established she had combat experience. She wasn't the best fighter, but she could hold her own and defend herself against scavengers.
One with no.
Also, at no point in the Star Wars sequel trilogy is Rey better at combat than Kylo Ren. She's never his equal in any of that.
Yeah.
At any point.
Do you think he will mention Kylo banging on his wounds to elicit dark side emotions? Probably not. He already thinks that he's a Sith Lord.
Combat experience, who lived her whole life as an orphan, just trying to make it to the next meal.
How do you think she made it to the next meal? How do you think she survived for 14 years on that hostile environment? Right? Because this goes back to Literature Devil's video, right? It's like, she survived because she's just awesome. No. She survived because she's had to. She's had
Meanwhile, with Luke, they're like, and Luke is a farmer, so we can assume that he knows how to fight and that he knows how to use guns and he knows this and that. We can just assume that. And you're like, why?
That her instinct would be that of self-preservation, that she would run away from even the possibility of a fight. But see, that's the genius of our subversive writing. Everything that we establish that should inform her motivation.
I'm sorry. Go back, because that's exactly what she did. She was running away from the fight. But not only that, the fight on Starkiller Base was an echo of their earlier match, right? She comes in there with a gun, and he chases her through the woods of Takodana, and is in flight, right? She loses like 20 rounds at him, and he just keeps coming like a goddamn Terminator. So she's in flight, right? Doesn't work. This one, she's in flight, and he pushes her to the edge where she can't run anymore. That's the point.
Exactly. Shadow Ranger says, this makes me want to rewatch the sequels. I absolutely encourage it. You know, despite our individual rankings of the sequels, The Last Jedi being the top for me, Force Awakens middling, and The Rise of Skywalker low, I can still watch them and enjoy them. Like, it's, again, a lot of these people will kind of lambast you for having the ability to enjoy something that this not your favorite thing in the world or you dislike, and they'll call you shills for it, but y'all are being fans. Like, I can watch the Book of Boba Fett and accept its flaws and just but also acknowledge the story that it gave Boba Fett. You know, that's the thing about media consumption these days, right? We're in the era of extremes. We talk about it all the time. Like, it's either a 10 or a 1. So you either have the game of the year, or it's the worst game you've ever played. You either have an Oscar-winning movie, or it's the worst movie ever. When there exists The Last Airbender and Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yeah, and what's funny is, like, these types of videos, we'll make them, we'll put them out. And because our title isn't going to be, this is the worst thing of all time, and thumbnails where people are crying and dying and shooting lasers out, or you're putting, AI women half naked or whatever, whatever they're doing, because we're regular people, we're not going to get the same amount of views, and that sucks. But I'm okay with it, though, because I would rather spend time with you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want those people who only want that type of engagement. That's weird.
Yeah, my integrity is not up for sale.
Yeah.
But if you guys would like to support us, we'd appreciate it and welcome it. I mean, this also goes into what we've been planning to do as well. With rewatches, we are, if you go to dyadintheforce.com, we do have a portal that we can give you guys copyright reactions, and we're going to start doing the film commentaries. So I think, what did we do? Did we decide on an order yet, or are we just going to go release order?
I think release order. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with A New Hope, and you're probably gonna hear me complain a lot about the first 30 minutes. But yeah, are you able to offer a slightly higher sub level or something like that? I wouldn't mind paying a little more.
We appreciate that.
You could just like do super chats or stuff if you want to do more, but like we don't really want to kind of make it all that expensive, really. We do have more, so we do have multiple tiers of membership on YouTube, but yeah.
But see, that's the genius of our subversive writing. Everything that we establish that should inform her motivations, we just throw out and make it so that she's an empty self-insert for the audience, completely void of any personality. This way, we can send blank slate junk trader girl to the island that sad Luke is hiding on, so that it feels to the audience like they're the ones going to get Luke. It doesn't.
That never crossed my mind at all.
But that's how I feel about Starkiller.
Matter that sending junk trader girl makes no sense compared to sending someone like Leia, who I guess might want to see her brother or whatever, but trust me, this way is better.
I mean,
this way,
if Luke is hiding in shame for losing her son, then you would want to send someone that can reignite that flame in Luke, which is Rey, which is why they sent her. But again,
or or kind of like a neutral third party that doesn't elicit those emotions immediately. That's why he threw away the lightsaber to begin with.
Yeah.
Wait, do you guys have a podcast? I would totally listen to this stuff at work. We do. Yes. YouTube.com/Dyad in the Force. Our podcasts are usually live on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific. But the VODs are available on the YouTube channel as well. But the Tuesdays that we go live, I particularly go live on Tuesdays, but Chaco sometimes joins. It's just for us to kind of hang out with you guys with no format. What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Leia is also leading the resistance and helping them evacuate before their first order comes. Exactly, yeah.
And her husband just died. So there's some other stuff here going on.
Junk trader girl, and by extension the audience, gets to be the one to bring Luke back to the Force, back to the fight. I mean, not actually back to the fight, but you know what I mean. Oh,
that was one of the coolest scenes in The Last Jedi.
Right? In Star Wars. And was the coolest feats.
And just wait until the boss, Mr. Filoni, gives you one of his OCs to play with in your story. Talk about easy money. With Ahsoka, we took an aging actress with very little physicality, gave her about 10 minutes of sword training, and then set her up against Hayden fucking Christensen, whose lightsaber is to this day a seamless extension of his body, even after 20 years. He made her performance look absolutely embarrassing, and literally no one cared.
What do you mean no one cared?
I don't know what he's getting at, but to also say Rosario Dawson has no physicality is also weird. And then also to call her an aging actress where you are picking someone who represents the character at a specific age is also weird.
It's also misogynistic.
Yeah, because Hayden is also getting old.
I think he's older than Rosario.
Yeah, no, he is older than her, although they did know each other. They went to the same acting school back in the day, which also makes them more like Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yes.
Anakin and Ahsoka are have a 5-year age gap. I feel like people forget that.
I also want to point out he's such a glazer.
That's true.
It's really weird to see so many people prop up Hayden Christensen in this day and age when we grow up with people roasting the shit out of him for his acting and clunky dialogue. Like we're like, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but me and Chaco probably, we grew up literally being hipsters. Being like, no, I cared about Hayden Christensen before you guys did. Like, you guys were hating on him.
It's actually kind of funny because people find out Star Wars content and they're like, oh, you like Star Wars? I never talked about it. I could swear to you I was the only person on the planet who liked the prequels growing up. So I just stopped talking about it because they're like, you like that garbage? No way Yoda would ever use a lightsaber. They ruin his character by making him do flips and stuff like that. And you're like, dude, it was sick though.
Yeah. We just know that obviously the the critical landscape has changed over the years, and being that the prequels were the first Star Wars films I could see in the theaters on my own, I'm very much aware and hyper aware of all of the hate that they got, including the hate for Jake Lloyd, Ahmed Best, Hayden Christensen, sometimes even Ewan McGregor, but it wasn't as, preposterous. Yep. But like to see, I mean, we all know what it is, right? There are people who love the prequel trilogy and they grew up and they found a voice. And now they're treating everyone else the same way that their favorite characters from the prequels were treated. Which is a horrible way to kind of reconcile with those feelings.
All they saw was that Vader Vadered, and that was good enough. And just in case you need even more examples of how to do this correctly, let's talk about the Acolyte. Oh boy, my favorite one so far. This one takes all the elements we've just established about how we at Disney have characterized lightsaber combat and perfects it to a T. Have characters use lightsabers when they shouldn't, and not use lightsabers when they absolutely should.
Lightsabers have always been used as a source of light. It's just the technology wasn't there back then for it to actually
serve as a thing for light.
Yeah.
Like a Cal Kestis, you use it as well. But it's what is he trying to say?
I don't know. That you can't use them as a flashlight.
No, but the whole I mean, I assume he deep throats Anakin's lightsaber on a daily basis, and that's improper usage. But beyond that, Yord using it like that was for a reason. That's part of his character. Like
we're slowly reaching the tip of the not the tip, the very depths of this iceberg.
Well, I mean, he said they don't use it when they should, but she does pull out her lightsaber in this conflict.
Man, would Glaze fall in order for those gameplay segments where you use it as a flashlight, then get mad at the Acolyte? Probably. He's also mentioning the clunky baseball bat looking ass combat. Like, huh?
Should? Check. Clunky baseball bat looking ass combat? Check. Ignoring damage.
This is not clunky at all.
That's clunky?
First and foremost, these are choreographed by Chris Cowell. Or, am I getting that name right? Cowan? Chris Cowan? Of Riven XI, of 1,000 Pound, like they did the Naruto films, like fan films. He was the original. He was the original critic of the sequel fights, and they brought him on to do the Acolyte fights, and now people like this are roasting his fights. It's insane.
But once again, if you look at Luke on the sail barge, he literally swings it like a baseball bat. And if you look at Luke in his fight against Vader, he swings it like a baseball bat. He swings it like a hammer. I'm cool with it. It looks cool, and I'm okay with it. It's a lightsaber. You know what I mean? Like it would still be effective. But like of all things, this fight is not that. Like this is top
tier.
5. It's top 5 in Star Wars. I don't know who else to tell you.
Episode 5 has some of the smoothest lightsaber choreography in the entire franchise.
Absolutely.
Episode 8 too. The final fight where we got to see an Old Republic style force wave. I've never seen. Like literally, they gave us Old Republic force wave, and people got mad.
And
at
cortosis, and like, God.
We've never seen that in Star Wars, and you can only see that in SOTOR when you press 3 if you have force wave on 3.
Yeah.
But seeing that, I was like, "Yo, you're dumb if you think this stuff is bad." Like the choreography.
Damage? Check. Ignoring power scaling? Double check. Contradicting lore? Oh, you betcha. Check, check, check. This show
Nope.
What lore?
He doesn't know anything about lore.
is the epitome of the writing style I'm trying to teach you. Write whatever the hell you want, however you want, spend no time or effort at all, just throw dots up on the screen.
So he's not going to acknowledge that light whips were in Legends before. I mean, he didn't explicitly complain about that, but he showed it on the screen in the same thought as him doing this. So they must have a problem with light whips.
And let the audience cope their way into connecting them for you. This is writing perfected for the modern era. This is peak fire bro. This is Disney Star Wars.
You know what the most ironic thing about this video is that the type of writing that he is describing is not what Disney Star Wars has been. It has been this entire video.
Yeah.
I'm convinced if they gave us the Old Republic and Darth Revan, these people would absolutely hate it. Of course.
Absolutely. That's not even a maybe or an
So
almost.
go on then. Off with you. Go write the next great Star Wars lightsaber fight. Take everything I taught you today and let it blossom into exactly the kind of soulless sludge we're constantly oozing out onto our streaming platform. Sure, we have record low subscribers, terrible review ratios, and our stock is dropping faster than our producer's pants at that one pizza parlor. But it's like I said before.
Wait.
We're constantly oozing out onto our streaming platform. Sure, we have record low.
Isn't this from 2023 to 2024 was a pretty huge slog in terms of content for Disney Plus, wasn't it?
Not only was that period a huge slog for content, but Disney, we didn't have it in the United States, but they had cricket everywhere else around the world. They lost the license for cricket, and so the subscribers who wanted cricket left. But to say record low subscribers is crazy. There's literally only one profitable streaming service, and that's Netflix. And then the second closest is Disney Plus, which happens to also be the youngest. So they're actually doing a lot of things really right. But again, I come at this from a investor and a financial background, right? I've worked in the financial industry for like 8 years now. But these people only pull things that support whatever narrative they're going to try and spew. It's nonsense. Like, and also he tries to show this, but like, I don't know. It's weird.
I want to contextualize this also. They may have in this period lost 4.2 million subscribers. But how many total subscribers do they still have? I don't know the number, but being the second largest next to Netflix says something.
Low subscribers.
Sorry, not second largest, but closest to profitability.
Oh, okay.
Now, they might actually be the second largest. That part I don't know. But there are more factors in there.
There's terrible review ratios, and our stock is
Netflix only hit profitability like Jesus in the last few years, and again they're the first.
Disney
and I know I worked for Netflix in 2012.
Yeah, whatever.
But
Stocks are volatile anyway.
And that's that. So that's the other thing, because I was majorly invested in Disney stock because they launched a streaming service and the whole world went on lockdown. So when I left my job I'm not going to say the name of the company, I almost did. I took all of my money and I put it into the market. But I bought a ton of Disney stock for one thing. Because I knew that streaming services were going to blow up because we were all on lockdown. When we got to the end of lockdown, you know what I did? I sold all my shares. You know why? Because we were in the middle of an unsustainable bubble, and only an idiot would continue to hold on to it. So, like, anyone who tries to use the financial aspect to say they're doing bad is a moron, because there's a lot more aspects to it. I was looking at Disney stock in a video about lightsabers is crazy stupid. Like, Disney has more properties than just Star Wars. They're in more industries. They have theme parks. They have like having bad lightsaber fights doesn't affect Disney stock. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
I also want to kind of bring to attention, what do you think we would see if we showed a 5-year picture?
I mean, if we showed a 5-year picture,
we would see a lower low.
Yeah, I want to say if you looked at it pre-COVID, you would be at around or just below this amount. And during the COVID period, it went up to, I'm going to say, like 180. It was like it was crazy overvaluated. That's why I was like, I'm gonna get the, I'm gonna sell out and run, because it was a bubble. It was absolutely a bubble. I also invested heavily in oil. Oil started trading negative at one point. God, I bought so much oil and sold that too. Great times.
But what I'm saying is, like, if we look at a much broader picture, we would see that their value is still pretty high, even if in the last 6 months it has lowered.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, anyone here in the chat, like I say this all the time, go look at the value of the Star Wars IP. Go search it up and understand it was purchased for $4 billion. By the way, $2 billion of that was stock. And so, like, George Lucas has made way more money than the cash he was given, and is also one of their biggest shareholders, and was like, yeah, I believe in their vision going forward.
Yeah.
Dropping faster than our producer's pants at that one pizza parlor. But it's like I said before, that's all just the haters, the toxic fans, the ones who care so much about Star Wars.
Thanks, Eric.
For all their toxic and hateful rhetoric, I bet that if we decided to...
Low was March 2020 at 85, then hit 200 during COVID, then 81 on September 29, 23. Now at 112. Oh, okay. So this 6-month low in September of 2024 was showing an 88. So based on his video, it should be lower, right?
Yeah, but he's an idiot. So Eric, I bought at 85. Sorry, I bought at like 88, I want to say, and then I sold at 189, and I was like,
that's when he got the good backgrounds. he went from in the X-Wing to like fancy backgrounds.
To give in and start making stories like we did back in the day. If we started putting effort into being consistent with the rules of the universe.
They are very consistent with the rules, and there are no rules. They're very consistent with continuity.
Stories are set and started setting up and paying off meaningful emotional beats, writing likable and nuanced characters with understandable and approachable worldviews.
As he shows likable and nuanced characters. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? This is wild.
Gosh.
Who, speak to each other like real humans do, not speaking in strange, stunted platitudes or catchphrases.
Luke speaks like a real human.
Relationships, even romances that are built up over time. And
how much time? One movie? What romances is he talking about that he's referring to that was not built up?
Oh, did he just make a pedophile joke? I didn't hear. I was still laughing at other stuff. But probably.
Let me check.
each other like real humans do, not speaking in strange, stunted platitudes or catchphrases, who build deep relationships, even romances. Romances that are built up over time instead of overnight, where heroes are allowed to be...
Oh, he shows Osha and Chimere, but that wasn't built up overnight either. I don't even think that's a romance right now. She just chose to train with him.
He actually spent like a good amount of time with her first, but also
it's a romance. It's not, you know.
Well, have you never had chemistry with someone?
Yeah,
overnight?
I would say.
I mean, I'm sorry. Game recognized game, and he's coming up short, man.
I would say budding.
Oh, the pants down and the pizza parlor clip. Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I would say budding.
Yeah, you could say it was budding, but also like not all romances need to take several films to do, unless you're an incel. But that's a whole different topic.
The pants down in a pizza parlor clip. So that means he is a consumer of that propaganda. Those conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Be sacrificial with no get-out-of-death-free cards. Real stories with real consequences. Yeah, I bet if we started writing like that again, then all those...
Stop showing Andor, because it just completely annihilates your point.
Real stories with real consequences? My friend, I would love to introduce you to the High Republic.
Toxic fans would come crawling right back to us and start giving us their money again and telling their friends to watch our stuff, and then they would give us their money too. Well,
no, they wouldn't.
And your money. That's never going to happen.
Because they make money. Oh, okay, yeah.
Also,
can you go back? Is he saying that even if they give him what he wants, they still won't accept it?
Give us their money too. Well, you. That again, then all those toxic fans would come crawling right back to us and start giving us their money again and telling their friends to watch our stuff, and then they would give us their money too. Well,
they still watch this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But for bad faith reasons.
You and your money. That's never going to happen. We're Disney, bitch, and we don't do that here.
I'm gonna call this video done.
Yeah, there's not even like a true narrative thread to his video. That was a weird place to go.
I know. Like, where was the lightsaber conclusion? There was no conclusion at all to any of that.
Anyways, yeah, let's get this off and let's just hang out with the chat.
Yeah, we're off of it now. Anyways, that's the video, guys. Like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. The whole video was wrong. Everyone in the chat knows it. They spent the last 2 hours with us just reacting to the most horrible and most cringe video we've ever seen so far, at the very least. But yeah, we'll see you in the next video. We're not over yet, guys. We're not over,
but that's going to be a separate VOD that we can like toss up on the channel at the end. But if you do have, if there are other videos and things that you would like to see us react to, let us know. Some of it will have to be, for depending on exactly what it is. Some of it might have some copyright stuff we'll have to work around. Again, we're going to be able to put up VODs onto our website that are full and unedited so that you can actually, get the full Monty there. But yeah, that'll be coming soon.
Yeah. Given that we don't have official Acolyte viewership numbers except for the first 2 episodes, even if we look at the numbers we have now, like Nielsen only tracks like a limited number of households, and they're not. It's not an all-encompassing picture of the entirety of like global viewership.
Also, hot take: But who the hell cares? Like, viewership shouldn't mean anything to anyone. I just finished watching The Penguin, which I thought was fantastic. It was one of the best superhero shows, and it's not really a superhero show, but it takes place in the superhero universe. Fantastic. It was never a top streaming show, right? It never hit Acolyte's numbers, but it was still good. So the amount of people is not going to determine anything about it. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Nielsen is statistical sampling. As a math major, this is inherently flawed.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, but yeah, if you take a course in statistics, it's like, yeah.
Was this better than the hyperspace video?
No. Yes.
I mean,
I'm sorry. This was a lot better than the hyper.
How? But what are we saying when we say better? I think this one was more infuriating to me.
This one was more inflammatory. The other one was less inflammatory, but had more stuff wrong.
That's true. Yeah, the hyperspace video was chock full of just wrong.
And like the real inflammatory stuff was like isolated tangents that we can be like, this tangent was stupid, and we get back to it. But this one, he wove the garbage throughout the narrative, you know?
Which was odd because it really just detracts from his whole point. Like whenever you're talking about lightsabers and then you bring up like story and character development and romances and world building, you're just like, sure, there's an element of that in lightsaber duels and lightsaber combat, but what does that have to do with your point on writing for lightsabers?
Yeah. Perry says, the hard part of finding bad grifter videos is finding ones that aren't too long. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we institute a rule where whatever video it is, we only go through 15 minutes of it, because that'll stretch out to 2 hours to an hour. I don't know. We can figure something out.
We do get a lot of comments saying that they like the long reactions, though.
Geek of All Trades says, yeah, there are plenty of reasons why shows get canceled, and the viewership was not the one for Acolyte. I said it before, I'll say it again, but what's his name? Bob Iger straight up said, we're going to do less stuff going forward. We're going to do less stuff going forward. And he said that for both Marvel and for Star Wars. And so, like, the Acolyte, it wasn't, and again, I still feel like it's a semantic battle, but I Will Die on the Hill, it wasn't canceled. It didn't have a season 2 greenlit, because those two things signify very, very different things, right? But you know, even Marvel, we're gonna get a bunch of stuff next year, but after that, that's only because all that stuff was already greenlit. That stuff was already in process, and then it's gonna slow down because when Bob Iger came back, he told us that that's what he was gonna do. He told us.
Someone said react to Star Wars Explained. Listen, all due respect to Alex and Molly, I feel like that would be boring as hell. Like, we would watch the video and then at the end we'd be like, yeah, that's correct, that's right.
but we could do that.
Nothing to
say.
Know? Yeah. We could.
I would actually like to. Let's react to one of their videos, and like we can expand on the lore on certain things, because they'll probably move to it pretty quickly. But yeah, we want to show. I'm happy to show us acting in good faith, right, with the same energy on every video, regardless of who's making it.
But I feel like we do that anyway. It's just that the videos that we've reacted to have been grossly cringe.
Well, yeah. It's like someone once told me, you don't have to correct me every time I'm wrong. And you're like, I don't. You just don't know you're wrong until you get corrected. Like, it's one of those types of things.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the difficulty with this fantasy space. There's a lot of people who think that they are right, but it also plays into the Dunning-Kruger effect that they also don't know enough to know when they're wrong. Luckily,
Joseph Barons, what's going on? Oh, I don't know. I see some chat, and I haven't been responding directly to yours for a while, but yeah, whatever you say next, we'll read aloud and respond to it. I hope you don't feel like we're trying to ignore you.
yeah. But the whole point of us reacting to things is so that we can provide the sources. So people know where we're getting it all. So every time Dad video watch Star Wars Explained afterwards negates the feeling, and there you go.
Yeah. Yes. There's this. There's just too much popularity surrounding negative culture war videos. And so those videos get a lot of views, but they aren't getting views from fans. Spooky says, I'm telling you, trashing Melvin's vids would be very good content.
How? Okay, can you give me the?
He's so dumb.
Can you give me the?
It's Knights of Melvin. I've had him blocked forever, but he frequently goes after and attacks like mutuals of ours, and it's really sad.
Can you try sending a link in the chat? I shouldn't have any restrictions on it, actually. Not at this point.
Look how poor Dragon Age Veilguard was treated, though there are certainly valid criticisms. Yeah, people were super weird for Dragon Age Veilguard. I want to take a moment to talk about game journalism. People aren't paid to do reviews. Like, that's not a thing. That's not an actual problem. Like, you are in violation of FCC law if you are paid and you don't disclose it. And you can be sued as well as the company. So any of us who've actually worked with these companies, we all know that they will look. I mean, if I made a video, I don't think it even aired, but I did like a whole commercial thing for Star Wars Hunters, and they had to go through it to make sure, like, hey, you know, you're going to acknowledge that this was, you know, when Mattel sent like toys, or Hasbro sent toys, they're like, hey, make sure you say that you gave us. And one time I posted it without that on accident, and they were like, hey, can you make sure that you put this in there? Like, yeah, absolutely. They are invested in making sure that everything is above board. But if you talk about Dragon Age Veilguard, it's, oh, how much were you paid to say this? Oh, who's paying you to say this? It's not a thing. I know that when Star Wars Outlaws was coming out, same thing. And I remember a Star Wars Theory thing, the video that someone pointed out to me, where he said they approached me, but I said I can only do it for this much, and so they said no. But then they said I couldn't say what I wanted to say, so I was like, screw you. That's a lie. That's the absolute lie. A, they're not allowed to ask him. You have to be approved by Lucasfilm first and foremost, and he's not. B, they didn't pay any of us. Now you can argue that people, you know, who do get flown out to play a video game might be positively inclined to view the game based off of that positive experience. But let me let you in on a secret. The people they send codes to and stuff are people who tend to like those types of games. So I mean that's already a thing.
I mean, it's marketing 101.
Yeah. Another weird thing I see is people are like, you can't trust reviews from IGN. I'm not a proponent for IGN. I don't look for them for reviews, but I just want to point out the obvious logical fallacy with that. They're not one person. It's a whole team of people. You send them an MMO, you send them like an RPG, and it's going to go to the person who loves playing RPGs. You send them a first-person shooter, it's going to go to the person who loves first-person shooters. Of course, they're going to be oddly positive.
Also, that stuff is provided for review purposes with press kits and stuff. It's not. They're not paying IGN for the review.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, right? It's not a conspiracy where they're trying to get you to like do all this stuff. This is how commercials work. This is how marketing works. This is how it's always been. There's no conspiracy going on. People aren't being paid. It's just really dumb. So when it comes to like reviews for games, find someone who either typically shares your opinion on stuff. That's one. 2, find someone that reviews this type of game. And 3, find someone who is consistent. Right? I can watch it in a review from someone who hates a game, and because of how they hate it and why they hate it, I know I will love it. So it's still valuable, you know?
But even past that, the Carpet Nugget Kingdom will always have creators that play every single game to hate it, right? They don't enjoy a particular
Hello there.
That surprised me.
Hey, thanks for the follow,
Let's see.
Geek of all trades.
Eric Shinoka says, honestly, Steam reviews are a good measure. They require people to actually buy it and show how many hours they have into it. The great point. There are. I mean, yeah, for a review, I think that's the best way to do it. I don't think people should be able to run their mouth about something that they have zero experience with.
Which kind of like one of the other Carpet Nuggets that I think their last couple of videos have actually been based on the trailers because they didn't like play it or they didn't watch the show or the movie. I think Critical Drinker did a She-Hulk review based on the trailers because he didn't watch it.
Yeah, that's the word. I was sent one of his videos, and it was his review on season 4 of The Boys, and he didn't watch any of season 4.
Yeah,
he made a review based off of what other people said about the show. And his review was like, I'm super conservative, and they make fun of conservatives in it. That's what it was.
Either way,
which is also weird. You don't have to share the political views of the person who writes a show, and to enjoy the show. It's interesting.
Yeah, but just to echo what Chaco said, like the people who play those games that are reviewing it have far better talking points than people who just review every game. Right? It's kind of like the woke game detector list. It's like none of these people play these games because they're fans of the game genre. They're just they load it up and they're like, oh, there's a slight mention of a gay couple, woke, informational, whatever. Their arbitrary ranking system is.
Hey, it says Steam reviews aren't reliable anymore. It's a lot of review bombing, and I had to make an account. I mean, that's fair, but at least I can see like, oh, they played the game. They played Dragon Age Veilguard for 0.5 hours. That means you didn't get through the character creator, my dude. Like, you haven't played the game. So at least I can tell that much, you know?
I smell profit.
Rebel Scum super chatted 5.25 credits. Yeehaw.
Hey, thanks for that that super chat. Rebel Scum, I would love to hear your thoughts on why a lot of people only care if things are a 10, and if it's not a 10, it's a 1. I don't think there's a particular reason to it. I think that's partially, you know, there's a lot of people that consume media these days, and they consume media from people who latch onto these extremes. They are unable to see and comprehend the nuances and arguments, the nuances in a narrative, in a story, and their review is largely a whole bunch of extreme buzzwords.
Yeah, and Roboscope, I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I'm going to say that common sense is dying. And I do say it hesitantly, but I look at, for instance, the gaming industry, or how it is right now, where like if you play a game, well, people are looking at these reviews of like, if this review is not, if my experience playing it is not 10 out of 10, then you were paid and you were bought and all this stuff, and no one can acknowledge that your mileage may vary. This person may have thought it was a 10 out of 10, and that person didn't. And there could be so many reasons behind that. It could just be expectation. It could be, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that it could potentially be. But also, these algorithms are so spiky. The algorithms are meant to silo people towards things that they specifically want, and the algorithms reward this type of it's a 10 or a 1 narrative. They don't reward nuance. I don't think they can.
Yeah, like I said, they're just not capable of acknowledging the things that they enjoy in a project, right? Most of these reviews are very, very superlative, right?
There's also the race to be first.
Yes.
As well. So like using Dragon Age Veilguard as an example still, people said, oh, the voice lines are bad and corny, and the everything's all cartoony and stuff like that, and it's not dark at all. And when you play it, and I saw those reviews, and what I realized, they only played the first mission. Like the first mission, the color scheme is very purple because there's a big magical like ceremony happening at that time that you're fighting against. But like, you can't tell me that you feel that way when you're in, what's it called, like the nether world and stuff like that, or when you're on in certain places. Like, everything's vastly different, and people say it's not dark. That first village you jump into and see the blight, that was gnarly, you know what I mean? And it just gets worse and worse when you play through Weishaupt, or what's it called,
Weishaupt.
Yeah, that's like playing through 9/11. Like, it's you're like, I actually loved that whole set piece because as dark as everything seems, it progressively gets darker and then darker, and then you think you won, but you didn't win, and it gets worse and then worse again, and you're like, man, this thing is wild. But if you've only played that first mission, like when you introduce these new characters, that's the other thing. I feel like I'm just rambling here, but when you introduce a lot of new characters at the same time, you have to be spiky. The characters need to lean heavily into their separate identities to make them stand out, and then you build upon that and add nuance and bring them into a normal. But it's because you're meeting so many at the same time that you don't want them to blend together from the start. And so those are narrative tools that are common, And so, yeah, some of the conversation, especially early on, is a bit, it's kind of weird, overly expositorial. But, like, yeah, I don't know.
It's also, going back to Rebel Scum's question, like when your source of information comes from people who are being largely superlative and not really nuanced at all, how far can your thoughts really go? Like, if you were to tune into us and we said, we don't like The Rise of Skywalker, it's trash, it's badly written, it's craps all over George Lucas's legacy, how much of a conversation can you have with us about that movie, right? And so if that's your what you watched as a review, then it's probably the worst movie ever. But if you talk to somebody who liked it, or if you talk to somebody who disliked it and can articulate why they disliked it, and provide actual criticisms and have a conversation around that, then it starts to get into the more subtlety. The conversation gets subtle, and it becomes less about worst and best and more about, well, there's a couple of things here and there that I enjoyed, but I still couldn't get over this part or whatever. So the longer you have a conversation about something, whether you like it or dislike it, the better the conversation is, and the more you can avoid the extremes on both ends. Because quite frankly, nothing in Star Wars is a 10, except for The Last Jedi and Empire. Just kidding. Nothing in Star Wars is a 1 either. Like
holiday special.
You'd have to watch Star Wars with a blindfold, really, which is what most of these people do, to judge it as a 1.
So I got into it with
hold on. Even with Acolyte, with the review bombing, it's still 18.
I got into it with another creator because I pointed out, they complained about a bunch of stuff, and I pointed out that all the answers of the questions we're asking are in that episode, spoken verbally. And you also kind of have to realize that some of us can watch Revenge of the Sith over and over and over again, and on watch 37 you notice something new. There's a new nugget. And you're like, oh, awesome. So you go online and you share, like, maybe this part means this. Maybe this does this, because you love it. And you're trying to soak up every little bit of it that you can. The opposite is true if you don't like something. You don't watch it with that critical eye. You don't notice the small details or the nuances. You don't come back to it with fresh eyes to look at something new. You know what I mean? I grew up as an emo kid, and I know the difference between hardcore, post-hardcore, screamo, emo, Midwestern emo, and like all this stuff is very, very different to me. But if you ask me about country music, it all sounds the same. It sounds like there's literally 5 country singers on the planet, 2 female, 3 male, and they sing all the songs, and I can't tell the difference. You know what I mean? But that's because I don't like the genre, and so I can't get at any of the nuances to it, which is okay. But I'm not going to make a channel. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I can. I'm not going to make a channel reviewing country music.
Yeah. That's why a lot of these tourists, the Carpet Nugget Kingdom, they only exist to make money, and their conversations and their rhetoric around the subject is juvenile at best. So when we challenge them to have nuanced conversation, they really can't happen. They're used to proclaiming something to be the worst thing ever or the best thing ever, and then not having a conversation that follows up on any of those thoughts.
Babu Frick, he's one of my oldest friends. Did make me chuckle. Listen, that was C-3PO's movie. Anthony, he did his thing in that film, and I was definitely there for it.
Yeah.
That being said, man, there's so much more to look forward to. So we've been, chilling in the negative for a lot of this episode, but you guys, what are you most excited for? Have you seen anything else that has really kicked off or heat up your interest? And yeah, what do you have brewing? And then also, Pep, have you watched the John Williams documentary yet?
No.
Neither have I, but I want to watch it and discuss it this Friday if possible.
Do you want to record a reaction to it for the portal?
Yeah, we might be able to do that. And then I definitely want to reach out to some of our friends to see if they might want to come on and talk about it. I would love to hear Marianne's thoughts.
Yeah. have had hundreds of acolyte conversations. Not one could back up their opinions. We'll see. That's kind of like the media landscape of the Carpet Nugget Kingdom, right? Is because whenever you do come across somebody with a negative opinion of the acolyte, it's always a parroted talking point. It's always Kiadi Mundi. It's always, you know.
God, I'm just thinking of they changed his birthday on Wikipedia. You're like, you mean they updated it when they got new canon information? That's so funny.
It's always what, like Yoda knows now, or like it's always something
like,
really dumb.
And like Yoda knows what? You don't know what you don't know what he was told. God. Eric Shinoka says, I'm really excited for Outlaws DLC, but unsure if I want to resub to Ubisoft. So, man, Ubisoft did a dick move recently, and I am kind of upset at them. But I don't want to take it
aren't
on
you a
Star Wars
shill? Why
Outlaws.
are you talking bad?
I am excited for a DLC. I feel like that game and how it was created and all this stuff is like a perfect platform to have continuing adventures and meet new people and explore new planets and stuff like that. Man, I had a lot of fun playing that game, and I do need to go back to it. Its launch was imperfect. You know, it was beautiful, but sometimes, much like Dragon Age Veilguard, my computer sounded like a helicopter was going to take off and fly around my room. But beyond that, there's so much that they can still do in order to just let us have fun in that world. You know?
Will I be able to continue mine if I just resub? Because that's how I played it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You can cancel your subscription, and when you go back to it, you can still re-download like your stopping point from the cloud. So that's. I'm hoping Black Sun is added in one of the DLCs. That would be so cool to have Prince Seizure. I want to do another heist. I don't know if anyone has read Star Wars Scoundrels, the book. It's an underrated Timothy Zahn gem, and it's gonna be awesome. I'm Spooky says Ubisoft apologized for the racists regarding the new Assassin's Creed. So they capitulated a little bit to them, but the thing that bothered me was what they did for, what was it, The Crew?
I don't remember.
So they shut down the servers, but they also removed the game from everyone's library. And this is coming like 6 to 8 months after they said people need to get used to not owning their media. So they were telling us you licensed the game, but it was never your game, and they removed it off of people's machines without telling them. And
which is why I'm just gonna sub to play and unsub when I tell.
Yeah, that's a practice that that dog will not hunt. I'm not about that. I think the best people who've ever done it was like Star Wars, you know, when they weren't doing any more of the Jedi Outcast games, they just publicized the source code, and people could do whatever they want. That's why you have movie fights. That's based off of Jedi Academy code, because they just were like, here you go, do whatever you want. People have private servers that you can join, and you can play that. Right now, there are private servers where you can go play Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah.
That's crazy, and that's awesome. No one else is supporting it, and they're like, if you loved it, you can do this what you want. And the thought of Ubisoft taking it that way, it hurts my heart. I hate it.
I also got an email from Sator saying to log in before 7.6 because you might lose your name, the character's name. What is 7.6 about? I don't know, but I'm probably going to log in. I do really want to play Legacy of the Sith.
Yeah, I'll log back into it. I'll log back into it again as well. Although You know what they did? I subscribed for so long. By the way, I found a loophole, and it probably isn't holding up anymore. But yeah, so you had to subscribe in the olden days. But if you subscribed, there was more stuff that you got. You could have more stuff in your in your inventory. You could have more money, and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if I unsubscribed, I'd lose like half of my characters and all this stuff. So I just found a card I was not going to use anymore, put it on that card, and then canceled that card. So it never unsubscribed, but like I could go back to it and be like, oh, I just need to put a new card down. That probably is not going to work anymore. I'm okay with it though now. It's been plenty of years.
How was your Hondo Onaka era?
Yeah, I mean, I played through every single. I went through a bad breakup, and just got absorbed into that game. That was like.
Oh, I mean, I didn't need a breakup for that game. although in my MMO years, I did go through a lot of breakups, so maybe I'm just conflating that.
I went through for a long time. I wouldn't consider myself a gamer. And then I broke up with this girl, and I was like,
now I'm a gamer.
I have so much time on my hands. What did I used to do with all this time? So, okay, they're releasing all inactive names. Do I even want my name? I don't think my name's Darth Chaco. I mean, my character names, I suppose, but most of my character names suck, and I probably am going to want new ones that are already taken by other people.
Yeah, I mean, if they're releasing all inactive names, does that mean that you would just, like in World of Warcraft, you would be prompted to enter a new name, or is it?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also looking forward to some SOTOR streams as well in the future. Yoda's Hut is a catch-all for anything and everything that I want to live stream, really.
Yeah. You might be able to get Darth Chaco now? Yeah, exactly. Listen, so I always knew I wanted to make Star Wars content, and I was going to do it under the name Darth Chocolate. And I was Darth Chocolate on a bunch of things. I think Darth Chocolate 7 is still my PSN name. I want to see if I can change that now. But
you can't make this stuff up.
I joined TikTok and Darth Chocolate was taken, so I put in Darth Choco, and then that's what took off. So everything had to change.
But also
do you think that
Lando? We're both 7.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've always been 7 on everything. Do you think that Lando movie is still happening?
Apparently.
What do you think, Pep?
I mean, if the latest industry rumors are true, Donald Glover is EPing it, so we'll see. But they haven't announced anything official.
Donald Glover, what is it? 3 months ago now, did his final tour as Childish Gambino. I don't know if everyone knew this, but he's retiring that persona. So if there's a time to really work on this film, it's going to be now. I really do dislike how many Star Wars projects were announced in that 1 year, because we promptly went into COVID, and then it promptly ruined everything and everyone's schedule, and all this stuff got messed up. Yeah. And I do think we as fans need to take a step back and
well, particularly the Carpet Nugget Kingdom, I'd appreciate it if they just took a step back and stayed there. Seriously.
As most of them were once told, stand back and stand by.
Oh gosh.
I'm so sorry. I had to do it. Ooh.
All right. Well, it is getting late. I usually end this around 8 p.m. so that everybody in the East Coast can have the rest of their nights back. But it was a lot of fun. As aggravating as that video was to react to it, we'll keep on doing this whenever you guys have more videos. for us to react to. You can leave it in the comment section. We might start doing Knights of Melvin. We'll see. I've been seeing it a lot in the chat as in the last 20-30 minutes. So we might do that. How's it going, Chan Man? 4 rings. He's having some health issues, I think, and is taking a step back for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the scoopers made it worse because any type of executive that steps a foot within Lucasfilm gets reported.
Yeah. That's also true. So, and the problem with the constant reporting of this stuff is it's something we'll never, it's not announced. It's just something that someone was working on, which studios get pitched scripts all of the time, and they like pick up things to option that they may never use, and then we complain about it.
Yeah. Good night, Geek of All Trades. That crowd can take a step back on the edge of a bridge that they're standing backwards on. Yes,
see.
and Spooky Kitty can take a step back on the bridge that Natalie Portman is standing in.
Eric Schnoker says, I really need to spend a month just binge reading Zahn. I mean, Zahn's got some bangers. What do we got? So we got the first Thrawn trilogy. I like the OG Thrawn trilogy. And then, we have the canon 6th Thrawn release. We got Allegiance. We got Choices of One. We got Scoundrels. We got Spectres of the Past, Visions of the Future, Outbound Flight. There's some bangers, man. Yeah. You can spend some time just trucking through there.
As Jaybird said, have a good night, guys. We are ending Yoda's Hut, but thank you guys so much for. Yes, there are 6 canon Thrawn books, as we mentioned, but thank you guys so much for.
Thrawn Allegiance, Thrawn Treason, Chaos Rising, Greater Good, Lesser Evil.
Yeah.
Check them out.
All bridges lead to Natalie Portman. I mean, I wish. I mean, I would build bridges around me, But thanks for hanging out, guys, on this Yoda's Hut. We'll be back on Friday. We'll be discussing the John Williams documentary, finally. Hopefully. We'll see. But we'll see you guys on Friday. Thanks for hanging out. On to the next one.
For Light and for Life.
We are all Disney writers.
And may your latest bridge lead you to Natalie Portman. Peace.